All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Perceptive podcast here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. I'm, of course, Josh Placer, and we have another great cast lineup tonight. My guest is a maker of video game trailers and has worked on many noticeable titles, including Firewatch, Spelunky 2, Half-Life Alyx, among others. And he is on to talk about how to make effective video game trailers and tips for developers watching this. So please welcome to the cast, Derek Lieu.
Thank you for having me. How's
It,
it going?
it is great to have you on. I am doing great. Weather is like weird. It's been on and off, hot and cold here on the East Coast. But how about where you're at?
Oh yeah, where are you based?
I'm in New Jersey.
Actually, I'm also in New Jersey.
Nice. You
We can
never
share
know
later
sometimes.
afterwards where you are. But yeah, it's a really nice day today.
For once this week, at least. But it is great to have you on, and thank you so much for agreeing to come on for our little chat.
Yeah, no problem. I love talking about game trailers.
hmm So, for people watching, when we usually do these casts, we talk about game development and game design a lot. But one of the major aspects of game wisdom and trying to do more is talk about the marketing and kind of the work that goes around game development. And marketing is certainly a major part about this. Shark and Chad and I, we do a show on Thursdays where we review indie game store pages. And we talk about like the thumbnail, the descriptions, and of course we mentioned the trailer. So it's nice to have somebody on who makes trailers to kind of talk a little bit more about what goes into them and your thoughts on what are effective game trailers.
hmm
So
Absolutely.
to get the ball rolling, since it's your first time on the cast, for people watching us live or recorded, could you talk a little bit about your background when it comes to the
Sure.
game industry and any other major projects that I didn't mention at the start?
Sure. I've been doing video editing for 18 years. I guess if you count like when I graduated from college, so I worked at a movie trailer house for a few years as an assistant. I worked at an anime DVD production house as an editor. For about 6 months for this weekly Nintendo news show that was in based out of New York. And for the past, let's see, 8 or so years, I've been doing game trailers either as an editor in Los Angeles or freelance, a mix of both. But for the past, I keep forgetting, like 5 years, I've been full time working from home on indie games and still going.
Nice. Besides the games that I mentioned, any other noticeable projects people may know you for?
Probably. I've done some trailers for Dead Cells. I mean, they've worked with a lot of people, but I've done a handful of those. I worked on Ooblets,
Oh, nice.
Heaven's Vault, did a trailer for Manifold Garden, did a bunch of trailers for Thimbleweed Park. Um, I did recent trailer for Sea of Stars, the new Sabotage Studio game, the
hmm
RPG, like kind of like Chrono Trigger.
Okay.
I've done a lot of stuff. Been very fortunate to work with a lot of amazing people.
Great. And it's great to hear about like the variety of projects you worked on. I guess my first question is, what kind of attracted you to making game trailers, like after you got out of college and such?
Well, I didn't really know game trailers was a job until, pretty much, uh, I don't know, at least 6 years after college or something like that. So a lot of it was just being unemployed and looking for something after having made fan trailers for games. Because
hmm
when I first got laid off from that anime job I was talking about, I was making fan trailers for games like Metal Gear Solid 4 and Uncharted 2. That's when I started getting really into it. And my first professional game trailer job was for the Behemoth, who did Castle Crashers. I did trailers for Battle Block Theater, and I did the little stick figure puppets cutscenes in that game. So I animated those. And I got that job because I have a friend who works at the Behemoth. And then later on, I moved to Los Angeles, where I just applied to like a game trailer house, a place called the Hammer Creative, and I freelanced there for off and on for a year while still doing sort of struggling through more freelance. Then I got hired for full time for a year Then I got laid off. Then they called me back for some contracting, and then I sort of at that point it's like, oh, I should start trying to get jobs independently. So then that if job security isn't so great with like an agency, then I can take care of myself. Yeah, it was a long and winding path, and I didn't know I was headed there when I was on most of it.
Great. And for the chat watching us live right now, if you do have any questions for Derek about game trailers, marketing along those lines, feel free to leave them in the chat and we'll get to them as they show up. So, I guess with that said, from your experience, I guess this is a question I'm sure developers are wondering as well, like especially some of the first timers. Why is the game trailer such an important point? For like our show, we of course hammer this home, but it's great to hear from somebody who specializes in this on their importance.
Yeah, the reason I tell people that it's really important and will continue to be even despite things like TikTok and these other short form video things is that just a trailer is the shortest, most efficient way that people can get a good look at your game, short of playing it. I mean, if you were to tell someone, "Hey, check out this game, watch this 50-minute video about it," he will be like, I don't know if I want to do that. But if you say, "Hey, check out this new game, 60-second trailer," like, "Oh, okay, fine. I'll take some time out of my work to watch that." And I don't think there are too many other things that will have that sort of power. And also, just if assuming the trailer is well edited, then it will have that sort of 3-act structure to help you walk through all the important parts of it, as opposed to just like raw gameplay, which will probably show a small chunk of it.
Hmm.
I mean, I guess it depends on the game, but most games, when you're watching a minute of footage, just raw footage, it's only a small section of it. So trailers are unique in that they give you a little bit of a sampling of everything, respects the person's time, and can be exciting if it's well made.
Hmm. And my mind is kind of like going through like multiple different questions because I'm thinking about a lot of the stuff that we see on our show. So I guess the next one I want to ask you about is you mentioned, of course, the 3-act structure, and I was wondering if you could go into a little bit more detail about that for developers watching us right now.
Sure. So it's 3-act structure, but really it can be more like 4 acts because due to poor attention spans on the internet, which guilty as charged for myself, one recommended thing is to have like a sort of a sampling of stuff at the very beginning, which you see all the time with movie trailers now. People hate them, including movie trailer editors, where it's a little trailer for the trailer you're about to watch, but apparently it increases retention rates. And this is also good for something like Steam, where my friend Chris Zukowski from howtomarketagame.com did a study where he saw that a lot of people who browse Steam store pages, when they look at the video, if they look at the video, they start clicking through the progress bar because years of game trailers, which starts off with a bunch of logos or like really slow intro shots, has trained people to skip ahead because they know, oh, it's always going to be a bunch of logos for the first 8 seconds. So I should skip through. So make the first part really exciting so they don't do that. And I think they'll respect you for that and have a better experience. But they'll pass that sort of sampling, which doesn't have to be edited as crudely as just like mini version of the trailer. It could be some other way that you sort of get to gameplay as soon as possible. After that, usually I say next first act should be basic introduction to the gameplay, either like establish the genre so then that people understand what kind of game they're looking at, and then after that you should show the hook of the game, which, I mean, ideally the hook of the game starts as soon as the trailer starts, but not all games are like that. But so once you've established sort of that basic premise of the game, then this next part here twists that around a little bit, because for the example I give, it always comes back to food, is if I'm telling you about my ice cream shop and say, "Hey, I've opened a new ice cream shop in New Jersey," you'd be like, "Cool." And then you'd be waiting for the next thing. It's like, what else? It's like, if I just said, "Well, it's an ice cream shop," you're like, "Well, Derek, I already have this ice cream shop I really love over here. Why do I need to come to yours?" So basically, you need that twist there for your game. So for the ice cream shop, it could be like, the ice cream is stretchy, it's rolled, it's made with liquid nitrogen or something like that. And so then that second act there is that little twist. And then after that is when I recommend either, you show the most exciting stuff or just show shots that sort of emphasize how much content there is in the game. So that's where you put like, montage of all the different environments so people have an idea of the longevity of the game. Or it could be about like, I don't know, different skins and costumes or something like that. But I usually tell people, if you're going to make a trailer and talk about things like game modes, multiple game modes, you think about like Smash Brothers, save that for the end, because people don't care if there's a lot of something until they actually want the thing. If I told you, again, back to the ice cream, got an ice cream shop, or I got a shop. You don't even know it's ice cream yet. I got a shop. We got chocolate flavor. We have, I don't know, sesame flavor and garlic and durian or something like that. And you'd be like, okay, I'm glad you have a lot of flavors, but what is it? You're like, oh, it's dog food. Like, why did you say it in the first place? So a lot of trailers do that, where they talk about features and content first before we actually have a reason to care about why we want those flavors.
Okay. And a question from Alex came in, and they ask, do you think that a trailer before the trailer is a good idea for video games?
Yeah, it can totally work. They say that it increases retention rates, which the game industry doesn't really have, like the analytics and the testing that the movie trailer industry does. Movie trailer industry does a lot of testing for like every movie trailer you see that comes out. They show it to a bunch of people. They rate them shot by shot. Say, I like this shot. I like this shot. This shot rated 40% higher than this one. Make sure this shot is in that TV spot, which right now is testing low. Like stuff like that. So I trust them when they say, hey, those annoying trailers before the trailer, they work. So, there are many ways you can do that. And really, it just boils down to just having a little bit of footage at the beginning, which gives you a sampling, and then sort of resetting and starting over again. So there are many ways to use that basic formula to make something entertaining. It doesn't have to be just like annoying.
Now, going back to what we just said about kind of like having this like 3 or 4 act structure for the trailer, in terms of length, what do you consider to be a good length for a game trailer?
Sure. It's a very common question. And I'd say usually no more than 90 seconds. And the reason is just because that's just the standard. So think about it this way. Most movies that we see in the theater are 2 hours or so, maybe 90 minutes, 2 hours. If a movie came out and you realize it's 4 hours, you'd be like, it's you better know what you're doing there. So, I mean, if it's Bollywood, then it's just the norm. But if your trailer is significantly longer than what people expect just the standard trailer to be, and they don't know who you are, especially, then they're far less likely to give you that amount of their time. I also like to think about like stand-up comedy. So most stand-up comics, when you're at an open mic, you get like 3 minutes. Because no one wants you to be on for longer if you're terrible.
Yeah.
They're not going to give you half an hour your first go unless they're very generous, or I don't know, you're friends with a bar owner or something like that. So, if you want to go longer than 90 seconds, great. Just make sure you know what you're doing and know that people are going to look at that runtime, because you can see it right away on social media or YouTube. They're probably going to be a little bit hesitant unless, I don't know, maybe your thumbnail is like absolutely amazing. The art is just captivating. But generally, I tell people just try to keep it 90 seconds or shorter. But also never try to get up to 60 to 90 seconds because you think you're obligated to. Some people think, oh, well, all game trailers are 60, 90 seconds. It's like, how much content you think you can sustain? 20? Say, okay, don't make it more. Because if you have a long trailer, it's very repetitive. Your game looks much smaller than if you have a short trailer that's very like full of variety, because it's just a tightly edited trailer. Whereas a long one's like, well, they didn't have enough footage to fill 90 seconds.
It's just repeating it over and over again.
Yeah.
And
so only as long as you can sustain and be interesting.
Hmm. Now, a minute ago, you mentioned, of course, having logos and branding, and a lot of people usually skip that stuff at the start. And one of the things that I say, and Charlotte and I, when we review our trailers, we say, you don't want to put that stuff at the beginning when you're not established.
Mhm.
For developers watching, when or where is it a good place to put, game made by so and so or published by
Sure.
X and so on?
Yeah. I mean, the counter argument I've seen for that is, you do, if you are in for the long run, you do have to build a brand to a certain degree. But I still think it doesn't have to be the first thing that people see. If it's the first thing people see, like 1 second each, if that. The thing I like to do is a little bit of gameplay, quick logos, and then back to gameplay. Of course, you can always put on the end slate. But, there are a lot of very indulgent logo sequences out there in game
Yes.
trailers. It'll be like 10 seconds long. It's like,
Oh
I
god.
don't care. And I mean, even game companies where you do care, I think they're smart enough to not linger in logos for too long.
Mhm.
And also, even after you've put out one or two successful games, it might still be good to just say, like, from the creators of this game. Like,
Yep.
Supergiant Games does that. Second game came out from the creators of Bastion, then third game from the creators of Transistor. I mean,
Mhm.
by the time of Hades, they're a very well-respected company, and it still started off with from the creators of, I think, Bastion and Transistor, and then it's Supergiant Games. So
Mhm.
um, there are well-known companies that still maybe their logos aren't super well known. So if they're still being careful about it, then um, you should be too if you're a new developer. And I understand you've worked on this thing really, really hard, and you want to put your name on it. It's very exciting, but the trailers it's more for other people, less for you. Even
Mhm.
though this is like the first time you show like this big, exciting showcase of your game,
Mhm.
like you know, if you sell your game to yourself, great. You know,
Yep. Shark asks in chat, would a trailer before the trailer be better than having a cold opening for your trailer?
no, they're same for me. They're interchangeable.
Okay.
I like to think of. I have an article I wrote about like how to like different ways to open a trailer, and there's so many different ways to do it. One of them you can fit into the story. Oh, many ways you can just fit into the story, but one of them is sort of the like you might be wondering how I got into this situation, like sort of setup, which that could just be worked into the story and also be functionally a trailer for the trailer, or it could just be quick shots which aren't from the rest of the trailer. It's just new footage. It depends on how you do it. There's so many ways you can just
Uh,
the main point is just get to the point as soon as possible.
Derek, I didn't want to interrupt, but I think your camera went out. I can't see
Oh
you.
yes, sorry, my this camera overheats unfortunately. Let
Oh,
me see if I can switch to my webcam on my computer.
okay.
But you can keep asking questions while I try to get this figured out.
Sure. So, oh, there you are. Let me
Right.
move the window just a little bit here. So while I'm doing that, there we go. So with, I'm trying to see if anything else came in. Okay. So with that said, another thing that I wanted to ask you about, and this is something that I'm sure a lot of developers are curious about. You mentioned, of course, what footage to show during a trailer. And when we look at a lot of games or when we look at a lot of game trailers on our show, we typically see like two kinds. We have, as I think you said earlier, just kind of like naked gameplay. It's just I capture footage from my game, put it in my trailer, bing bang boom, we're done. And then there are developers who will oftentimes I'm not sure if the right term would be created, or maybe they'll have like edited footage. It'll be maybe a unique camera angle, unique things along those lines.
Yeah.
For you, like, what do you think is like the best kind of footage to show for a game in a trailer?
So it sounds like you're saying like the two kinds you've seen are footage that feels very like raw, sort of like they captured a whole bunch of footage, just took
Yeah.
all the best stuff from what it looks like exactly when you're playing the game.
Hmm.
The other one is a little bit more molded because they use like a debug camera to get a different angle, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
I think it's always better to have something that's more molded, which alarm bells might be going off if you're thinking like, well, but it's not true gameplay. It's like, well, a lot of like true gameplay is incredibly hard to parse. Um, if you ever watched that girlfriend reviews
Hmm.
YouTube channel, they have this term for like lots of stuff going on screen, specifically from Dead Cells. They call it diarrhea Christmas lights,
Hmm.
because it's just stuff is happening all over the screen. And in those cases, it can be at the expense of clarity. So one good reason to have footage which is functionally made to look like a shot that would happen naturally during gameplay, but it's sort of customized so then everything is very clear. I think that is the best way to do it. Sorry, there's a car alarm going on outside.
That's okay. They're doing construction outside my window right now.
But I mean, I think that the gameplay footage needs to be captured specifically for the trailer in many cases. I mean, I do have some in my trailers where just serendipity happened and like, oh my God, I'm glad I was recording when that happened because that was an amazing moment. Or maybe while I'm capturing an amazing moment will happen and I'll just try to recreate it because maybe there's something distracting happening in like this part of the screen or this part of the screen. So
Hmm.
even if there's a moment in the trailer that's like a mistake, it'll be a choreographed mistake. So then that you purposefully understand, oh, in this game you die a lot or something like that.
Hmm.
But I can usually tell when I'm watching a game trailer and the footage is just cobbled together from like a 4-hour session of playing the game,
Yeah.
because it's usually not clear. It also feels very it feels like it has a lack of intention. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
this person wasn't trying to, you know, I don't know, hit this enemy over here, then jump over here to do this platform puzzle or something like that. It's just kind of like, oh, it's just a bunch of stuff. And when you're watching a trailer where the editing and the capture feel like they don't have much purpose to them, there's no sort of like rhythm or
Hmm.
design behind it, then when you're watching that, you're going to be like, well, why should I pay attention? Because clearly this person didn't really put much into it. And if the editing and the shot order is random, then you don't know what to expect. So that means that you don't have an idea of where it's going
Hmm.
and you kind of don't care to find out because it's going to be someplace random. Whereas if a trailer is made with like a lot of intent, whether it's just something like cutting on the beat, it's like, oh, this person put in that much effort to just at least cut on the beat. So I
Hmm.
know they cared about it that much. So I will care a little bit more.
Yeah. And like you said, getting that flow right is very important. I think it's very tricky for a lot of developers as well. And one of the things that we see from a trailer, some of the games that we've played, like you just said, there are some where it just feels like I'm watching random game footage. Here's a fire world, here's an ice world, here's a mechanical world, whatever. And then you have those where, as you said, like if it's time to the music, I think that's like one of those really nice flourishes that kind of gets your attention going. Like when I think about that, like probably like a gold example would be something like what like Gearbox does with like the Borderlands trailers, and how their trailers
Sure.
often use music, and it almost feels like the music was made for the trailer, in spite of the fact that it's from a well-known band that never heard of this game before it was featured in it.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I tell people is if you have good art and good music, you are so far above everyone else.
Oh
That's the other thing.
yes.
Don't use gameplay music. Okay. There's very few games where you can take the game audio or the game music tracks and use them in a trailer well, because it's designed usually to loop. So that means that the beginning of this track sounds basically the same as the end of the track. So your whole trailer feels like the energy is just completely even all the way through. I can like it's the exception when I'm working on a game. I say, hey, send me your music files, and I look through them, and I'm like, oh my god, I want to edit with this music. Usually it's like, needs to build a little bit more here, and we need to have an ending added to this because right now this is set to just loop back to the beginning.
Hmm.
So Katana Zero, I did a trailer for Katana Zero. If you look up Katana Zero therapy session trailer, that game has amazing music I just used the tracks that they gave me,
Hmm.
and I loved every second of it.
Yeah. And for people watching us live and recorded right now, yeah, like music, that's another universe of a topic for these kinds of talks. Now, speaking about gameplay, a question Alex brought in, and this was actually one I wanted to bring up as well. And that was, how do you make a trailer with odd or abstract gameplay? And to like kind of add on to that, obviously there are plenty of different kinds of designs out there, and as you said, like very like action, very artistic games, it's easier to make a trailer because you have something very punchy, something very impactful to show. But
Yeah.
there are we have of course seen plenty of games, from the puzzle genre, from turn-based strategy, games that are more slower paced. They're not exactly lending themselves to that very high octane trailer. Do you have any advice for developers who are working on games along those lines? And does anything change in terms of trailer for them?
Yeah, I mean, the basics of the structure and pacing are the same for those games. It's just that it is much more difficult to make visible the player decisions, which is what your goal should be. You need to help people understand what is the player doing, how are they affecting change in the game. So it could be as simple as title card and then footage of the game. So the title card would hopefully explain what is happening in the next shot, because sometimes that's enough to say like, hey, in this shot we're building a mansion or something like that, whereas otherwise it could just be a shot where just a mansion just plops up on the ground, but you don't know how it got there. But if you have a prompt that tells you what happened, then that can help. um, Another way is just have like a developer narrated trailer where they're just explaining how it works. They're a really great example of that one is Heat Signature trailer Tom Francis made with Alex Ashby, which is a hilarious trailer. But if you've ever seen footage of Heat Signature, it's like bird's eye view. The graphics aren't super detailed; they're pretty small on screen. But with a narrator and like super good writing, then you understand. This is a scene where they swapped positions with this guy, took their weapon, and then did that. Whereas if you just looked at raw footage, it'd be really, really hard to parse that, and it would be really fast. But like, there's certain things you can do with like a montage to show progression, which is another thing you might want to do for like builder games. So
Yeah.
the trailer for Per Aspera, I think it's a Gamescom trailer, is really,
Hmm.
really good at this. Is you see, I guess it's Mars, and there's a little white dot in there, and they zoom in on this white dot, and then now that it's a little like city or a building. Then the next shot is like a second building. Now they're connected, and now the next shot is like a third building, and they just kind of build and build and build, and it's really, really well made. I highly recommend
Hmm.
looking up that trailer.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, there's a trailer for, I forget the name of the game. Well, one thing they did, this trailer I'm thinking of, they just did like a graphical overlay. It was for like a builder game, and they just had this overlay that said like circle these buildings and said like industrial and residential or something. It's kind of like a blueprint sort of thing.
Hmm.
So any way that you can show player intent and player like interaction. So um, say it's like a game where it's sort of like a twin stick shooter, but everything is just shapes, like Geometry Wars, something like that. Make sure the camera's focused where the player is moving things around and always looking at that, because otherwise it's just shapes all over the place. You don't know what's going on. But if you can sort of center them around this one thing, I can see that this person is moving this, then they'll be able to interpret everything else. So if you have to zoom in on the footage so then that you don't see anything but the player, just at least to get people oriented, and then you can just keep their eyes focused on that thing and understand this is where the player like lives in this game, then that helps a lot. But yeah, text, narration, maybe story dialogue, but just anything that you can add on to just have those invisible concepts be revealed.
Hmm. And I want to ask a question about that, but a shark asked a question a few minutes ago regarding zooming in the gameplay, like for a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So he said, so then you suggest zooming in on gameplay when it won't cause the player to misunderstand the gameplay itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you might be thinking, my art's not supposed to be seen at that. It's only 1080p or something like that. And I say, I don't care. If it makes it clearer, if it's the difference between a bunch of footage where people are like, what's going on? Or versus like, oh, okay, yeah, got it, cool, cool. Then do that one, okay? I don't care. People aren't going to say, oh my God, the art's so terrible. It doesn't hold up when the person zooms in on Premiere. People aren't that mean. They're mean about things like puddles and bloom light or something like that. But like, if it's like very clearly just zoomed in a little bit, 150%, then it's fine. For the sake of clarity, then do what you need.
So, getting back to what you just said about kind of using narration, text, things like that. When it comes to like using text in a trailer, do you have any like tips regarding that? Because I've seen games that sometimes the text is just like text on black screen. Sometimes it's text overlaid on gameplay footage. Like, any suggestions regarding what's the best way to show text during a trailer?
Okay. Yeah, I got a lot on this one. So the basic tip is if you have text on screen and anything else, the text will always win, assuming the person watching can read it. Like it's their language, because just our eyes are drawn to it. So if there's any text on screen, the text will be seen and everything else will be forgotten. At best, maybe they'll see some like color, or if they somehow decide to not read the text, then your text isn't going to get read. So usually I recommend, first of all, trying to make your trailer without text. Just try it without text first. Don't assume you have to do that because you saw it happen in another trailer that you really liked. So, if you're going to have text on screen, make sure it's, make sure that you want it to be read. So I see this a lot with game trailers where they have like dialogue boxes and they don't give you enough time to actually read the dialogue because they didn't really intend for you to read it. They put up the shot to say, hey, there's dialogue in the game, which for me feels like a wasted opportunity, because if you have dialogue boxes, that means there's a story in your game generally. So why not use those dialogue boxes to actually have dialogue that helps tell your story? It shouldn't just be like, hey, there's dialogue. It's like, okay, great. Check out my movie. There's dialogue. So try to have as little as possible. So I will frequently, like, say I'm working on a game with a bunch of dialogue. There's a line that's 2 sentences long. I will try as hard as I can to make it 1 sentence or fewer, or just be like a really, really quick phrase that says a lot about either the story or the character. But I try to never have any dialogue on screen or text on screen that isn't meant to be read. If it's not meant to be read, then just cut it out or do it better somehow by picking something more evocative and sort of illustrative of what your game is all about. So if you're going to have text on screen, make sure that you don't care that anything else is seen. Like, don't expect that someone's going to look at the text and then look at the gameplay and back and forth, and then they'll split their attention and end up getting like half of every other thing. So if you're going to have text on screen, the background should basically be a background. Like, it should be made to as a very fancy frame for that text, I think, rather than be like the thing that the text is talking about exactly, unless it's like really, really easy to read that gameplay shot. But the text will always win.
Do you recommend, or are you fine with having text on a black background when there's like no gameplay footage, or should there be something behind the text or something else on screen with the text?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how good the graphics are. It can be kind of boring to just be black on screen, but I mean, it could be a missed opportunity to say something more about your game by having a cool background made by a graphic designer, get a motion graphics designer, because just the graphics themselves can say a lot about the game. Like, if you think about graphics from, I don't know, The Darkest Dungeon, that looks like the Darkest Dungeon, not like much of anything else. So that's a missed opportunity. If it's just like Times New Roman on black, I'd say probably don't do it. Helvetica on black, probably also don't do it unless it really, really fits into the design and the art of your game. So, and again, a lot of times people don't need it because a lot of times I see text in game trailers and just pointing out something that is just blatantly obvious without the text.
And I'm glad you mentioned Darkest Dungeon, because that takes me to another question I want to ask you. And we have a few questions in chat that I'll get to after this. But with Darkest Dungeon, with another style of trailer that we see is kind of the opposite of what you described, where it's not gameplay focus, it's more, aesthetics and tone focus. And, Darkest Dungeon would be a clear example of that. I would probably say maybe like the first Hotline Miami trailer would also kind of fit that mold, where you're not really showing gameplay, you're showing something provocative, something that's meant to kind of give you an idea of the tone and mood of this game. For that, like, what do you think about those kinds of trailers versus the ones that we've talked about already that are more, gameplay showing, more, giving the player a good idea of what this game is?
Yeah, I guess I would wonder if I would throw this back to you. What about the Darkest Dungeon and Hotline Miami trailers feel like they don't show gameplay? Because from my memory, they do actually show a lot of gameplay, and they're like dripping with atmosphere and sort of attitude.
I think with the
yeah,
I'm remembering the very first the Kickstarter promo trailer that they also use as kind of their primary trailer that it showed them unearthing the mood or unearthing the tomb. They showed the character running away. They showed the ancestor shooting himself at the end. I don't remember there was actually anything in game during that first trailer.
Okay, this is for Darkest Dungeon.
Yeah.
I think I haven't seen that one, but most of the ones that I've seen do have gameplay, but they usually strip out a lot of the HUD, but you can still kind of see turn-based battle. I think it's turn-based, where you see the slashes across people, and it's very moody. I think that those trailers have their place. You shouldn't think of it one size fits all for trailers. Everything has each trailer has its own strengths and weaknesses, and if you have a game that's just dripping with mood and tone and stuff, and that's basically your hook, which that's a big part of Darkest Dungeon, then make a trailer about that, and then hopefully you get people on the hook for that, and then they stick around for your gameplay trailer. If you got it, flaunt it. And Hotline Miami, I mean, they had some live action stuff, but I think most of those were very gameplay focused. It's just that those are mostly, I think there's one trailer that wasn't made by my friend Kurt Gartner, but he works at Devolver. He made pretty much all those trailers. And there's a lot of After Effects sort of CRT, 80s sort of filters and stuff on those, but that's just to emphasize the setting. But largely they're very gameplay focused and have a lot of zooming in and just very stylistic editing in them. But yeah, if you got all that cool atmosphere, then make a trailer out of that. If you think that's enough, then great. It's hard to know if that's enough because it's your baby, and it's hard to be objective about something you've been working on for years, probably.
Yeah, and one other kind of follow-up question to that before we get to some of these questions in chat. For games that have multiple trailers, this is sometimes something we see from kind of strategy games or more complicated or abstract gameplay, where they'll have here's our major story or the showy trailer. Then we're going to have the very gameplay that's just literally us playing this game for 3-4 minutes long. Or here's our trailer that's only talking about the crafting system in our game. What are your thoughts on games that have 2, 3, 4, 5 different trailers? And how do you approach that strategy?
I think if your game has that much nuance and many systems and content in it, then absolutely go for it. Because especially like strategy games, people are really interested in those things. If your game doesn't have lots of systems, then don't stretch it out through a whole bunch of trailers. Like if it's a puzzle platformer and you get it from 1 or 2 trailers, don't make 6, because it's basically following that rule I was talking about, where if you have a 90-second trailer and it's all repetitive, then it can be really hype killing, basically. Like, because if you think about it, the way I think about it is that trailers are like tent poles in the marketing timeline, and when a new one comes out, you're usually thinking, oh, something new, exciting is coming out. It's been X number of months or a year. I want to see what's been accomplished since then. And if that next trailer feels about the same as the first one, it's like, well, what have they done since back then? It's like, well, that kind of kills my mood, because now when the game comes out, I don't know if it's going to be much better. Because I think people, whether they realize it or not, I think they look at the content of each trailer, if they're following the whole thing. And if this trailer has this much content, this one has this much, this one has this much, like, oh my God, by the time the game comes out, it's going to have all this stuff they haven't showed us. But if it's like, trailer, this one's about the same, this one's about the same, like, oh, they're kind of spinning their wheels, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
So that's exciting. Probably not. But yeah, if it's like, Deus Ex, where you can play as a hacker, you can play as infiltrator, you can play as the action thing, then yeah, absolutely show all that stuff.
Okay. And as a quick time check, it's about 3:50. Do you have like another 15-20 minutes, Derek? Like, is that good for you?
Yeah.
Okay. And for chat, if you do have any questions for Derek, definitely keep them coming, because we'll get through some of them now. So let me pull up the chat here. Okay. All right, this next question came from Alex. He said, Derek, one of the things board games and Nintendo and so will use right now is having player reactions in trailers.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think it's not commonly used?
I think it's not commonly used because not a lot of games are about that sort of group that like group dynamic where it's like fun to play together, and you get the whole family in the living room and you play this game. So, and the other reason is that it's really, really hard to make that sort of footage look authentic. My friend Kirk, who I mentioned, he did the trailer for Fantastic Contraption, where they shot people playing the game. And he said he got all this footage where people were genuinely having fun and laughing. But when he cut it in, it's like, this looks fake.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I believe this. And it also depends on the market, because I don't know, if I'm picturing like hardcore gamer person who gets in console wars, they're going to look at this footage and be like, this game's not for me, it's not this, like, this is not my vibe. But like, maybe if it's like a more family oriented thing, where it's like you're going to get a bunch of kids together in a room, like I think of Happy Action Theater, that Kinect game that Double Fine made. Absolutely, you want to have footage of people having fun with that, because that's basically the whole point. But the reason that you don't have it is, I mean, also it adds another production wrinkle where you got to film people, which means you have to have decent camera, good lighting, and direct the actors and stuff. It's just it's more of that. I did a trailer that I edited for Heave Ho, which is a game released by Devolver, where you're like a head with arms on the side and you have to like hold hands to like get across platforms and stuff. And they used footage from it was some sort of trade show event where people are just playing and having fun. And that footage, like the audio was terrible because it wasn't mic'd properly. The reactions were great. The lighting was bad too. And what I ended up doing with that was just sort of making it a joke by dubbing in all the voices with like stock voices to make it feel really weird. But it's hard to do, and it's hard to make look authentic. So it's probably safer to not do in most cases, unless it's like a really core like pillar of your game's design and its appeal.
Yeah. And to kind of build off of his question, another thing that I see some developers will do is they'll use YouTuber and Twitch stream footage like directly in their trailers. Like they'll just literally like cut, somebody said something wacky while playing my game during their stream. They'll cut like that 5 second soundbite, and their trailer could just be made up of either nothing but those sound bites, or
Yeah.
gameplay footage, streamer, gameplay footage, streamer. Is that an effective strategy, or do you think that also gets into that, fakey kind of look?
I don't think it's fakey necessarily. You just need to make sure that your audience is sort of aligned with those streamers.
Hmm.
Because if they don't care about those streamers, then it's just like, I don't care about that.
Hmm.
So, the same problem with reviews. A lot of people hate reviews and accolades because like I don't read these publications. I don't care. But like if your game, say it's like um, about a certain subject that this magazine or website covers normally, and the person who is your target audience would probably go to that website to check out, see what they think, then great, you're saving them some work. But if it's just like a bunch of streamers and no one who watches the trailer knows who they are, then it's like, okay. But like I did a trailer for Subnautica, which has a giant support, a giant amount of support from YouTubers and streamers who are also very big and well known. And because it was an early access for so long, this whole community around each of these streamers came up.
Hmm.
So when we put quotes from like Jacksepticeye or I think Markiplier also, you have those communities watching the trailer saying, "Oh my God, they see us. They've noticed us. They're showing their appreciation of that." Like that's a really great situation where you're in tune with who's watching in like all sort of angles, and
Hmm.
that's a good time to do that. But if you're just a smaller game and you don't know who your audience is, you don't have much, but you got some streamers to play it, you got some footage, then I would say it's not as good a thing to do because it might make your game at worst look kind of weak because it's like, oh, they had to try to convince me by getting these reviews and these
Hmm.
streamers to say good things. The game itself couldn't, stand on its own 2 feet.
Yeah. All right. This next question from Shark. He asked, when making a turn-based game trailer and you plan on mixing in an animation that fits the game like a cutscene, and
Mm-hmm.
you're splicing the two together, are there rules for the percentages of each?
No, I wouldn't say that there's like hard and fast rule. I would say that you should use cinematic things as a flourish, not the bread and butter of the trailer. It's like, okay, if this trailer is a sandwich, back to food metaphors, you know, the sandwich is the gameplay, and I don't know, the garnish or the little bit of sauce is the cinematic part, which is adding a little bit extra flavor there, or sort of cleansing the palate a little bit. Um, it's not like one shot of gameplay, one cinematic, one shot of gameplay, one cinematic. It's not quite like that. Also, because if you have that sort of even pattern there, then people will get a little bored because then your editing is very predictable. It's like, okay, here comes the cinematic shot, here comes the gameplay shot, because you've programmed people to understand that's what your trailer is going to be like. So I would say, mostly gameplay, and then maybe you're transitioning to a new section by having this one gameplay bit be illustrated by a cinematic angle, and then you move on to the next thing, and you sort of repeat. But try to do things in like threes or less, because people like things in threes.
All right. And as a time check for the people watching, I say we have about 10 minutes for our discussion. So this will be last call for questions for Derek. So if you have any, please get them in now, because once we're done with the set that's in, I have a few quick questions for you, and then we'll probably begin to wrap things up for our conversation. So a question from Will came in. Since so many trailers use like fast synth music, cut on the beat, zoom in, close-ups, big screen shake on hits, etc., at what point will it make your trailer stand out more if you do the polar opposite of that?
Sorry, if you're like
I guess
You
doing
mean
the
like
opposite of what everyone else is doing. Like instead of doing like all like the fast cuts, zoom in, big screen shakes. Like I guess going like is there do you stand out more if you do the opposite of what everyone else is doing?
not necessarily, because people aren't super in tune necessarily to like the game trailer zeitgeist. I mean, unless it's maybe you're working within a genre which has like very familiar tropes, which there aren't too many that are like that. Like, um, I was going to say like the simulation sort of games, which simulation games like it's funny. They either are very dry or they're amazing. If you watch the
Mm-hmm.
trailer for Fishing Planet, it's an amazing trailer. It's about fishing. But I'd say never do anything for the sake of doing it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you should let the material guide your decisions. You know, this fast cutting makes sense because this is a game that has that sort of vibe to it. It's slow cut because it also has that sort of vibe to it. I once was critiquing a trailer for a game which was like a pretty chill, um, sort of like building and like a Pokemon like game, and for the sake of my critique, I was watching the video at like 75% speed because so I could talk over it. And actually, the trailer worked way better because it was cut way too fast at full speed. So you know, you should if you ever find yourself thinking, should I do this? This other trailer did it. Just stop there. Stop there and then think, why did that trailer do that? Why did that work? Is that what I'm trying to do with mine? Then great. If not, then do something else. You know, think about what your game needs, not what other people have done, what you're going against by having your trailer edited this way, etc.
Mm-hmm. And speaking about looking at other games for inspiration and other trailers, Baka Brian asks, if my game is meant to be in the style or spirit of another major game, is it better to have to be more comparable to the original or set it apart in the trailer?
What you need to do is what I was saying earlier, which is okay, establish that you're sort of in the similar space at the beginning, just so then the people know. Like say it's a like a walking simulator game. You establish yourself in that space, and then show us what's different. So like one of the main directions I got for the Firewatch trailer was we want people to know that stuff happens in this game. And what they meant by that was this is not like digital archaeology game, which like Gone Home was, which all the events that happened in Gone Home happened before you got there,
Mm-hmm.
except for the events of you going through the house. Whereas in Firewatch, all the things that happen in the game are things that like you're in the middle of basically. So we we could have made a Firewatch trailer where you're picking up stuff and looking at it, and it would look very much like Gone Home, but you'd be missing out on just like a big part of that game. So don't be afraid to just sort of be have a little bit of overlap of sort of like my game's kind of like this too, but quickly once you've established that, tell us why it's different. Again, with the ice cream shop metaphor, say, okay, got an ice cream shop. I love ice cream, but give me a reason to go to yours in addition to mine or instead of mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think for a lot of developers, especially those that are either mirroring or being inspired by other major games, it's very hard to kind of like try and break away from that. You know, if FTL did X, let me do X. If Darkest Dungeon is this, let me do it like Darkest Dungeon. And it's definitely tricky to try, as you said, like you have to give them you have to explain to them that yes, it's an ice cream shop, but at the same time, why should I look at your ice cream versus, all the other ice cream shops around me?
Yeah. And it basically people are just looking to see like people want the game to be different because people, they love Darkest Dungeon or they love Binding of Isaac. And if they can get some of that thing that they love, but different enough that they enjoy it, they're going to be thrilled. They're not looking to try to be mean, say, "Oh, what's this game think it is? Binding of Isaac's way better than this game." They want to find a new game. That's why they're watching a trailer for a new game. So, but you need to help them understand that this isn't just like a reskin. There's something to it, it's not like a clone where they just swapped out the art assets and everything's the same. They're trying to make a quick buck or something like that, which I think most people are not doing that. It's very few, or there's probably a lot of them doing, but it's in a certain part of the market. But yeah, it's you need to show why it's different, and this is why I recommend people try to think about trailers as soon as possible, like maybe even before they started making the game, because if you think about, okay, how would this game look in a trailer? Well, we show this part, then we show this part. How would that look compared to this game that I'm inspired by? It would look basically the same. Might need something more, you know.
And Shark wanted to ask you to clarify when you said threes, as in 3 parts of gameplay and 3 parts of animation.
Okay, so basically, like, if you're gonna have a montage, which is like feature, footage of the feature, footage, feature, footage, stop after the third one. You know, the third iteration of something. So like a lot of times in my trailers, I think of each section as one particular idea that, or high level sort of editing idea that I'm having. So like opening is, okay, you know, montage of the basics of the game. So maybe like 3 shots of just walking, 3 shots of jumping. That's probably still too many. Sometimes I'll do like 2 shots, and then when they're expecting a third, actually we've switched it around to the next thing. Then there's 2 shots of that. Then we move on to the next thing. But if you have like a section which is like, oh, in this game you walk. Once you get to the 4th shot, people are like, I get it. You walk in the game, okay? So don't try to repeat like a cycle of something more than 3 times, really. I wasn't thinking like, you know, 3 parts gameplay plus 1 part cinematic. It's not exactly that formulaic.
All right, great. And I think another question about that came in earlier. I'm not sure if this will be too much, if this is similar, but any tips regarding marketing a trailer? We've talked earlier about having like a trailer for a trailer, but
Yeah.
any tips on getting like people interested in seeing the trailer in the first place?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah,
That's more like a PR marketing strategy
yeah.
person sort of question.
Hmm.
I will tell you that just uploading it to Twitter doesn't do it.
Hmm.
I mean, it's you have, it depends on like the size of your game, your level of experience, how long you've been in the game. But I mean, make sure that Steam page trailer is really, really good, and people don't skip through that progress bar, because ultimately, if you're developing for PC and you're on Steam, that is where it really, really matters. But it's otherwise really hard. It's because like it's not just like post to Reddit and then post to Twitter, then post it to TikTok, then people will see it. It's really depends on so many different things. The not the least of which is just how your game looks and sounds and how the music is, that sort of thing. But I've definitely worked on games where there seemed to be no strategy for getting in front of eyeballs when it came out. It just got uploaded to YouTube or Twitter and then got a few hundred views, and then that was it. But if you have some sort of like press outreach where it's, you know, the trailer is part of this news article that you're going to get with this publication, that helps. But I don't actually know a ton about how to actually do that part of it. I just focus on the trailer most of the time.
All right. And Juan's question I think will be our last one for our chat, and then I have I think a few quick ones for you, and then we'll wrap things up. Juan asks, "Do you ever take a look at direct response marketing for inspiration for game trailers?"
What is direct response marketing?
That I am not sure of. If you can elaborate on that, while we wait, I guess I'll ask my question. Regarding narration or vocals during a trailer, I've seen some trailers, they'll have, unique narration. Again, Darkest Dungeon being a principal example. Some will just, they'll just use sound bites from the game. Like, they have, like, professional voice actors and actresses, or just, various, what's the term? Not barbs. How when people shout out, that kind of thing.
Barks.
Barks, thank you. Any thoughts regarding like what kind of vocals or narration to use in a trailer?
Yeah, that's something I like to do a lot of times.
Hmm.
And from my background in movie trailers, it's something I enjoy quite a lot, but it's very, very difficult to do because doing that is basically like taking a giant jigsaw puzzle and trying to make a smaller one that looks basically the same, using a certain number of the pieces. My main advice, if you're going to try to make a trailer story using dialogue from your game, is once you've put together your script, read through it from beginning to end. If it makes sense from beginning to end without visuals, then you're great. Where um, it's like I'm thinking about just like a fan trailer I made for Uncharted 4, which is like
Hmm.
um, Drake, we found Libertalia. Well, actually, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but one dialogue should feed into the next one, should feed into the next one, and it should make sense beginning to end. A lot of game trailers, even like for expensive AAA games, all the dialogue does not connect to the lines around them. It's just like, oh, here's a scene where this happened. Here's a scene where this happened. Here's a scene where this happened, and it's just chaos. It's total narrative chaos. Since none of it connects, uh, when you hear the next bit of dialogue, you've forgotten the previous one because your brain, it's just like, I'm trying to make connections here. How does this connect to this thing? Does this fit? No, it doesn't. Forget that one. Does this one fit to this one? No, it doesn't. Forget that. But if it's all from beginning to end telling a story, then it will just be a cohesive narrative, and people will understand. And if it fits together with the visuals, even better, because that's another problem, is if you have a voiceover track just completely divorced from the
Hmm.
gameplay. And it's like, okay, I'm either paying attention to the story or the gameplay, but since they're not sort of threaded together, then I'm only doing one at a time because they're not playing nice with each other.
And actually build off of that, if you do get like professional voice actors and voice actresses for your
Mm-hmm.
game, does it benefit the developer to actually like mention them, like in the trailer, so and so played by I don't know Troy Baker or
I
Nolan
don't think
North or anything like that?
I don't think so, because I mean, even the games that they're in, they don't do that.
Hmm.
People do as Hideo Kojima, which that's just his house style, and that's expected. But uh, no, I don't think so. I
Okay.
because yeah, those people have their fans certainly, but it doesn't say anything about the gameplay itself, which is ultimately what people care about. People just want to know how the game is. If has their favorite voice actor, Yahtzee. But other than that, I don't think people really care that much.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Not to say that voice actors don't do a great job and add so much to a game. I'm just saying that in a trailer,
Yeah.
usually that's not what people care about.
Mm-hmm. And one elaborate. Direct response marketing are marketing pieces that have the intention of making the buyer purchase by the end. Infomercials, sales letters in the mail, landing pages with a call to buy. So I guess like with trailers, like we also see it's like the kind of the call to action at the
Sure.
very end. Like any thoughts on that specific part of the trailer?
Yeah, I mean, the things like landing pages would have their whole like design, ethos about like, oh, first state the problem, then show how this thing fixes this. Um, I think most game trailers don't really function in exactly that way. I mean, just at the end of the trailer, make sure people know where to get it. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
don't do this. The title card comes up, and that's it. Like, where is it? Is it on Steam? Is it on Itch? Is it on PlayStation? What? It's like it's a title. It's like, well, look in the description. No one reads the description, okay? I'm telling you right now, people don't read the description. I made an anime music video years and years ago. Number one question in the comments, what song is it? So I put it like above the fold in the YouTube comments or the description where the first thing said was the name of the cue.
Mm-hmm.
Still got those comments. What's the music cue? People don't read, so make sure that's on the end slate. Buy it now, wishlist on Steam or wherever. And
Mm-hmm.
you're good. People like there's different schools of thought about websites, but my friend Dana Trabella, who works at Spoken Wheel Strategy, she says just get them to the Steam page. If you get them to the website, that's one more click between them and the store page, which is ultimately where you want them. Like I'm sure you have like nice screenshots and stuff there, but hopefully those are all on the Steam page too. So get them there, not your website, unless you're looking for like funding and publishers and stuff like that, and you want it all like laid out nicely for those people who care about those sorts of things. But if it's just for the customer, just get them to the store page, and hopefully your store page is excellent and helps answer any like lingering questions.
And hopefully, as my shameless plug, you watch our Thursday shows where we do review store pages and provide advice on that front. But I'm sure everyone watching reads all my lovely text I put in all my videos, right? And yeah, Dom Harris said people don't read something you really 100% need to learn in game dev. Yes, especially with UI and tutorial design, but that's another 3 hours I could rant on. And I know Derek has to go in a few minutes. I also want to say it's great to talk with someone else who also talks with their hands while we're having discussions, because usually it's just me doing that on these videos and casts.
Sure.
Trying to think, while I'm thinking about any final questions, anything else regarding the design, structure, or even planning a trailer that we didn't touch on that you like to bring up now?
Put your sound effects in. So many game trailers, music, no sound effects. Don't make your sound designers cry. Sound adds so much to a game trailer. Like, I mean, I know that a lot of video on the internet is muted by default, but if the sound is so much a part of how a game feels and can illustrate like the crunchiness of the game or something like that, or it can actually help augment the visuals, because if you hear a glass break, you're going to look for what that's happening on the screen. And so many game trailers I see, they just turned off all the sound, which I get it. When you're capturing and you're not dealing with sound effects, it's one less thing to worry about when you're editing. But it's really important to your game, so therefore it should be in your trailer. Because the harsh truth I always say is that more people are going to watch your trailer than play your game, especially your non-gamer family members. They're not gonna, they're gonna be like, "What's this? This is a real job you actually have?" It's like, see this thing that I made.
I've never heard of that either.
That's very nice. I sort of get what you do now.
You're crushing a lot of souls with that sentence there, Derek. Right?
It's the truth.
Yeah. I guess,
and that's fine.
So I guess one final quick point. I think we may have touched on this, but I just want to clarify it. There are some games that I've seen trailers that are just 100% all presentation, no gameplay, or even that it's more of like the spectacle of the trailer as opposed to the gameplay. Like, I've seen some developers will make it like an infomercial that it has nothing to do with gameplay, maybe it's just some wacky skit, and then maybe at the end it says, game is buy our game here. Like, do you think doing something like so outside the box, could that be effective, or should there still be a game connection to the trailer?
If you're going to do something that outside of the box, you better have amazing writing or amazing presentation or something like that. Something that gives something to the audience that they enjoy, and they very least get like good feelings out of that. Like, oh my god, that was so funny, hilarious. I gotta check out what this thing is. Not quite in the same vein. So, but a trailer I made for the Steam version of Battle Block Theater was a little bit like that. I mean, it did show gameplay, but it was ostensibly about making fun of all the things that PC gamers care about in games, about like frame rate and physics and stuff. Which Battle Block Theater is a puzzle platformer; it's 2 dimensions, doesn't have any of those things in it. But that trailer was also talking about the sense of humor of the character in the game, basically, and the gameplay was kind of the second thought in that trailer. But a lot of people loved that trailer, to my surprise a little bit. I thought people were going to be really pissed off. I thought they'd be like, oh my god, you're making fun of PC gamers. Instead, the PC gamers like, yes, that's me. That's totally me. I feel seen. I'm like, wow, really? And then like people are like, this is the best game trailer I've ever seen. I don't know what this game is, but I'm going to play it. But you either have to just be incredibly entertaining, give them something, make people understand you, have them understand that you understand them, make some sort of connection there. But if you just be like, hey, here I am, I'm being wacky, I'm doing this thing, by the way, that's a game. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
you know. So yeah.
Shark asked this quick question. I think this will be it. When you're capturing gameplay footage, you capture with music muted and sound effects on.
Yes,
Okay.
all the time,
Okay.
except when I make a mistake. But by and large, yes, I have music turned off. Maybe I'll play it with music when I first play it just to get a vibe of the game, but usually I just turn it off because I'm going to look at the music files later on anyway, and then mix and match them to the footage. So as long as I have a general idea of how the game works, I don't necessarily need to see the music in context.
Okay. Great. I do have questions regarding kind of the actual process of making trailers, but I think that would definitely go beyond our time for today. If you are free in the future, Derek, I would love to have you back on because I think this has been a fantastic cast. I'm sure everyone probably has like a few dozen more questions they're trying to hold off, flooding the chat with.
Yeah, well, if you go to a self-plug here, if you go to gametrailertips.com, that brings you to my newsletter, which is weekly, every Sunday. I've been writing it for 3 years now, which they're also on my website, derek-lieu.com. I have like a huge archive of articles, and I also have a YouTube channel, I have Instagram, I have TikTok, and I just talk about making game trailers and all of them, so they'll keep you busy for a really long time, and you'll realize like, oh, Derek talks about a lot of these same things all the time. I guess it's probably because that hasn't sunk in yet for a lot of these things. I just keep on saying a lot of these things because I just keep seeing game trailers, which not super strong is what I will say. But I mean, it makes sense because being an editor is not part of making a game in most cases. If you're making a film, it makes sense. You're going to have an editor on staff who at least knows how to cut images and sound together to tell a story, but it's not necessarily a skill you need when you're making a game. I'm sure it would help, but it's not always present within even like a giant team of people.
And if you can put those links in chat or put them in Discord, and I'll copy them into the chat for people who are interested, and I'll make sure to include those in the description. If hopefully people read that after in the recorded version of it.
I won't take it personally if you don't.
All right. See. If you want to send them to me, I'll put them in the description. But other than that, I think that will do it. So, do you have any final comments, final thoughts, anything you'd like to say to end this cast on?
Well, this will feel pretty shameless, but if you can afford to get someone to do a trailer for you, do that. Because there's so many reasons that it would be a better experience in many cases, because at the very least, objectivity is something that you'll get from someone else looking at your game. The thing I tell a lot of game developers is your game is both way cooler than you think it is, and also not as cool as you think it is. There's some things that you're like, oh my god, this is the coolest part of the game. I look at it, I'm like, fine. But like to that person, maybe they spent 3 months trying to implement that one feature. Whereas something else that they finished a year ago, I look at that, I'm like, why aren't you putting this in the trailer? Like, what? Oh, that? Like, oh, okay, I guess it's cool.
All right. So, again, it has been fantastic chatting with you this afternoon, Derek, and chat definitely enjoyed getting some very useful information about game trailers. And like I said, if you are free in the future, we can always have you back on for another discussion.
Sure, I'd love to.
All right. So, with that said, we're going to wrap up this week's Perceptive podcast here. Thank you so much for everyone tuning in live or recorded. I'll include links to everything that Derek mentioned in the description down below. If you are a developer working on an upcoming game or just want to chat some aspect of game dev with me, we are always looking for guests. Be sure to reach out and check out my books, do this, all the social media, here's my call to action I need to work on. Do all the liking and subscribing, smashing the subscribe button, all that other great stuff that's linked everywhere. But come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we in the art and science of games. Until next time, everybody, take care.